Welcome to the number one podcast covering Michigan State basketball. The Final Four is not on the schedule. Join Rod and me, Eric, as we dive deep into the Spartans to get you prepared for every game. Subscribe today for in-depth recruiting updates and fantastic interviews with today's important college basketball personalities like Robbie Hummel.
Thanks for having me. I have listened to your guys' podcast numerous times on drives throughout any Midwestern Big Ten city. So I am big fans of your guys' work.
Jay Billis.
And next time, hey, if anybody in Michigan wants a December tea time, call me. You wimps won't show up, but I'll be there. I'll be there and play in the cold. And Izzo will be in front of the fire with hot chocolate.
Coaches Thomas Kelly.
No problem. Glad to be back, man. Glad to be back.
Mike Garland.
You just can't sit there and trade twos for threes. You can't do it. You're going to lose. Coming down the stretch, you're going to lose.
And more. You won't find better coverage of Spartan hoops than you will get here. For both the casual and hardcore fan, come along as we take you for a green and white ride. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod here to talk about MSU's loss to the top-ranked Purdue Boilermakers in West Lafayette on Saturday, 80-74. Thanks again for tuning in as we continue to strive to offer you the best MSU basketball coverage. Thanks to everyone who left written reviews in their podcast players. We really appreciate it and couldn't thank you enough for helping us grow the audience and show. We're now only a few games away from the end of the season where we'll crown our champion in the Big Ten Standings Challenge. You can check out your predictions and compare them to Rod's at tffinots.com/contests. We'll also, again, have our bracket challenge. We'll invite our sponsors, Dom and Rod and I, and whoever else wants to compete for Nudge Printing gift cards. So make sure you check out that. Will be after the Big Ten tournament, obviously, after the selection Sunday. Well, Rod, this game went pretty much the way you expected from even before the season began, in the sense of final outcome, I guess. The actors, a little different, but the ending plays the same as before. Performance again, horror show in the sense that Zach Edey dominated as he has in so many games this year, and Purdue was lethal from behind the arc. Michigan State will now have to pick up the pieces and try to snap a 3-game losing skid at home against a team that seems to have had their number, the Wildcats from Northwestern. The one thing I'll say about this losing streak that's interesting is just how I felt differently after every game. For Iowa, I was just kind of mad at the poor effort. Ohio State was just disappointment, sort of watching that slow motion train wreck. Purdue was just annoying watching that team. Just worst. Just knowing that if they played well as they did against Purdue the previous 2 weeks, they probably would have had 3 more wins. And so this team continues just to frustrate. And I don't know. It'll be an interesting senior day in East Lansing on Wednesday night against Northwestern. But let's talk about this game in the sense that, that we saw a lot of things that we've seen in the past, new developments and the emergence of Xavier Booker playing a little bit more of a role as well as Kohler. But I think it just kind of came down to guard play again, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts.
Well, I think that Michigan State did a lot of the things that were necessary to have a chance to win that game. So, and we'll go back through our keys, obviously, but one of the things that you gotta hit shots from 3. You have to. Mm-hmm. They did. They were 9 for 21. 43% from 3. So they did that. You got to find a way to hang in there in terms of your rebounding. Well, they did that. They actually had 3 more offensive rebounds than Purdue in this game. Now, I got to do some quick math. 33%. It's
a lower percentage just because they're less. It's 32 to 28% in favor of Purdue.
So, but close enough. You're talking about a Purdue team that is, as we said, is dominant at both ends. Probably the best rebounding team in that country when you take into consideration both ends of the court. And Michigan State hung in there. You can't have a situation where you're giving the ball away a lot. They did. Michigan State had 7 turnovers. Purdue had 9. Now you'd hope for maybe a slightly bigger advantage there, but realistically, that was probably about right. So a lot of the things that they did were the kinds of things and the level of play that you would say were necessary to compete in this game. And in fact, that's what happened. They were in this game pretty much the whole way. Purdue never was able to put Michigan State away. They certainly had double-digit leads at some points in the second half, but they never really pulled away. The difference, I think, was two things. We're looking for why were they unable to win the game. The biggest two things to me were an inability to hit shots at the rim inside the arc in general, but I'll say at the rim, considering both layups and short shots, short jumpers. You know, the AJ Hogard shots,
5-footer floaters.
Yeah,
right.
That just they were terrible. Michigan State was, what were they? So they were 39. Just doing some quick math here. So 43. Yeah, I mean, just terrible inside the arc. And you can't have that. When you get those kinds of point blank shots, you got to hit them. You got to hit it. Certainly, you got to hit a better percentage than Michigan State hit in that game to do something that's extremely difficult to do. Remember the curve that we're talking about here. You're talking about trying to beat the number 2 team in the country in their building where they don't lose often to anybody. Michigan State hasn't won in a decade. That includes some very good Michigan State teams that were unable to win in that building. So that's the curve you're working with, right? That you're on. You can't blow easier opportunities. You can't do it. Not with the frequency Michigan State did. The second thing was you kind of, and we talked about this in the pregame to an extent, that you really had to hope Michigan State played an A game and maybe Purdue came in with a C+,
right,
to have a shot. And that really didn't happen, mostly measured by the fact that I think, you know, you look at Purdue hitting 10 of 20 from 3.
Yeah, that was the killer.
If you're adding, because we saw they usually Michigan State, I can't think of an instance where this wasn't the case. Michigan State typically does not sell out completely against Purdue to stop their 5-man. I'm not just talking about Zach Edey either. I'm going back through the years prior. Michigan State has never really done that. And Zach Edey makes it difficult to do that anyway, and they didn't do that against Zach Edey. Zach Edey had a huge game. But the problem is you had to hope that when those opportunities did not happen, where Zach Edey was scoring easily and Purdue got open looks, that they weren't going to hit them. And we talked about it in the pregame. This is a better team than a year ago in one very important way. They shoot much, much better from 3. And they came in shooting 40%. Well, they beat that by about 10% in this game. And that again was something that you probably needed to have them not hitting as well as they normally do from out there. If you really wanted a great chance to win, you needed them to have a little, I'm not saying you needed them to shoot 10%, but you needed them to be a little bit substandard. And they were anything but that. They just, at big moments when Michigan State would make a push, they'd get it to 5, they'd get it to 3. Purdue almost invariably answered with a triple. And, you know, that you tip your hat in those situations. That's the thing. Purdue creates, because of Edey, they create so many problems for you that you're likely going to give up something. Either you're going to give up easier opportunities to Edey, or if you're really swarming him, you're going to give up a good look at 3. And you just had to hope that they weren't dialed in. And unfortunately for Michigan State, they were. So, you know, it's frustrating only in the sense that you come away from it, if you're Michigan State, I think, feeling as if, I don't think it was Michigan State playing an insanely great. Clearly they didn't. But you feel like you played pretty well.
Yeah.
You played well enough to win, certainly And it's hard, people talk, oh, if they played this well, they would have won the last 3 games. Well, every game is different. The approach is different. The things you're being asked to do are different. I don't know about all that. I do know that I thought it measured in terms of adherence to a game plan and doing the things that you're setting out to do at a reasonably high level. This was a better performance from MSU than we've seen most of the time this year. They played better than this, but not often. And so it's a little bit frustrating when you can say that in all honesty, it's accurate, and yet you still lose. But I think you also have to take into account the difficulty of the challenge that you had in front of you. And on top of that Purdue also played well by their standards. They did a lot of the things that they expect to do in a game, or better, as we mentioned, in 3-point shooting. So, what are you going to do? It's unfortunate, but I think that I think Michigan State needed to really win this thing, as we talked about. They needed a little bit of good fortune and a little bit better execution in one very important area that they did not get. And that's it. That's enough.
Yeah.
When you're facing this kind of situation, that's enough to get you a loss. So you've got to be that much better.
Yeah, no question. And I think, this is one of those games where had Michigan State beaten Iowa and Ohio State in whatever manner, had they just gotten the wins,
people would be
I think we'd have been very satisfied. You'd be feeling very good about this game.
But then if they'd won those 2 games, would they have played like this? I don't know. I don't know. And it's, and that's
fair question.
Yeah. And that's the front. You want to talk about frustrating things. That's the frustrating thing. You're talking about a veteran team where you seriously have to wonder about that kind of thing, rather than, hey, we know what we're going to get, which is what you should have been. You absolutely should have expected, and you have not seen.
Yeah, I think it just, I don't know. It's one of these nebulous things. I think you could just say it's just a failure of leadership within the team, that they can't do this consistently, like play focused. And because I think they played focused. They played like they definitely understood the game plan. They executed pretty well. Like, we talked about rebounding. There's no question there was a different emphasis, but I'm sure that emphasis is there every game. Yet for most of the time, they don't seem to do it, except when, that's they're sort of told they can't do it. So I don't know. It'll be an era that I'll be okay to see pass. And I feel kind of bad saying that, but I'm just sort of ready to turn the page. Not to say that I'm not ready. I'm ready for the season to end, because I still think this team could do some things, and unpredictable. I think we just won't know. But it is a little frustrating that you just see so much inconsistency throughout the season with veteran senior leadership that you just wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I'm ready for a new era at one really important position. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think that's
and
that goes with everybody.
Yesterday was yet again another example of it, and I'll say this, and there will be a certain cohort of listeners that won't like this, but I don't give it. The emphasis certain quarters on personnel has, from the get-go, and this includes yesterday, been a red herring. It's always been a very simple deal. And once again, yesterday was another example of this. If you don't get high-level play from your guards, specifically your point guard, but others too, Michigan State will not win at the levels that people wanted to see and thought they would see. That's it. That's the name of the game. You can talk about the center spot. You can talk about everything else you want, but it really doesn't matter very much. If you don't get high-level guard play, you are not going to win. I don't know how many times people need to see that laid out to accept it. That's it. And you can fiddle, and I've talked about here and elsewhere that the situation at the 5 or the number of minutes Xavier Booker gets, all of that as being something at the margins. And I still believe that's true. Because look at what you saw yesterday. You saw Xavier Booker have a productive game, right? No question. I'm happy to see that. But did they win? No. Why didn't they win? Well, pull up ye old numbers and let's take a damn look. Why didn't they win? I see a point guard 3 for 13 from the floor, and the vast majority of those came within 5 feet of the rim. There's one reason. That seems pretty obvious. I see Tyson Walker 5 for 15. That's another good reason. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? It's a joke. If that's where your obsession is, that's where your focus is, you're missing the forest for the trees. You just are. They are not going to win games like this if they don't get better play from their guards. That's it. Nothing else is really worth that much drama or oxygen. That's how I see it. There are people out there who differ. I think they're dead wrong.
Well, I mean, let's just kind of go through a few of the numbers that you mentioned just with Tyson. There's no question Tyson Walker was the best player in this team for the first half, maybe a little bit beyond of the season. And he's still a good player, but he is just not what he was. And I don't know whether it's the injury or, but he has certainly just not been, he's not been shooting as well. And again, that just points to if he's not playing as well, there's got to be someone who picks up that slack, and we just don't have that at this point. I mean, Malik Hall's definitely been playing better, but, not to just put everything on AJ, but certainly Tyson has not been as sharp for whatever reason.
Well, I think that it's certainly fair to assume that his health has had something to do with it. No, nobody really knows. Nobody knows how come on. These kinds of absolutes, you can assume that that's a factor, but you know what? I've seen guys that were supposedly perfectly healthy miss shots for games after game after game. So who knows? He looks reasonably healthy. When I see him play, I don't see obvious. I mean, I'll just say that I don't see obvious signs that he's limited physically. Sometimes you see it. I don't see it. He's still quick. He's still able to get to spots on the floor that he wants to get to. So I don't know, but it's not. He's not as efficient. He's not as efficient. There's no arguing with the results. And that's the other thing too. Yesterday he only took 2 3-pointers, so he wasn't getting those shots. Never mind making them. He wasn't getting them. So, that's a problem. But the biggest problem is your point guard. I mean, that's just it.
Yeah. Missing.
I'm sorry.
How many layups did he miss? I mean, it was
layup,
or the 3-foot floaters.
Can't have it. Can't have it. And that's that's your ball game. That's a big part of it, at least, is that when you don't get efficiency from that guy at that spot in those positions on the floor, and you think you're going to go in and beat the number 2 team in the country on their building, no. That's why they lost. Or one of the big reasons. I would say reason A, and then the way Purdue shot being reason B.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah, I would only add that, AJ, the one thing, offensively, he was not good. I thought he was pretty good defensively. I mean, he had a number of steals. I thought he pretty good, and he played with a lot of energy.
I thought he played hard.
Yeah.
Just
couldn't finish.
The occasional criticism, which is a valid one at times, that he didn't come in with focus or play with sufficient energy, those types of things. That was not the issue. But look, he's down to his last few games of his career at Michigan State. So that's not enough. It's you got to play with efficiency, and he was anything but efficient in that game.
Yeah, and let's talk about Xavier Booker a little bit, because everyone's obviously obsessed about it, and we're not going to get into how many minutes you played, because I don't think we either of us find that interesting. But I would say I was really impressed with him in the sense that he seemed more comfortable offensively in a flow, setting picks on the roll, and that the two threes he had were obviously really nice in that sequence. Then he started getting abused defensively by Edey, who, let's be honest, he abuses everybody, so it's not like it was unique to Xavier.
Right, yeah.
He got buried more than the other guys, maybe, but whatever, But his progression is really, he's looking much more comfortable on the floor, much more comfortable playing. And so you can definitely see what he's going to become. You can see why he was so highly sought after. And I just hope people realize that, this wasn't, if you've been watching, this is not what he looked like 6 weeks ago, certainly. So it's great that he's going to, at this point, I almost wonder why you don't start him. Now, you probably won't start him next game just because it's senior day and you'll start Mahdi for that reason. But I wonder if you just, at some point, you just kind of start him for the rest of the season. How are your feels there? I know it's not your primary focus, but certainly it's an important position.
I don't care. I say that not because I don't think he's playing well. He has been, but when you're talking about starting, who cares?
Yeah. Well, it's minutes total, right? That really matters.
That matters. That matters.
Floor at the end of the game.
If you're going to tell me, well, he should be seeing a certain number of minutes. Okay, that's a discussion. Starting, who cares?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Mahdi Sissoko starts these games. He's not even. They're not even waiting until the first TV timeout to substitute.
That's been the case all season.
Yeah. So who cares?
Yeah.
But minute, do I think that he deserves to play? Has he earned the right to see more time on the floor? Yeah, probably so. But I think he's been getting it. He played 17 minutes against Ohio State. He played 12 in this game. It was also true that he had some foul trouble, which I think affected that a little bit. But, that's all great. Ain't going to make the difference. Hate to tell you. You can play Xavier Booker for 40 minutes. If they don't get better guard play, it doesn't matter. All right? But so that's my frustration with this whole discussion. And I want to make this really clear. It is not that there's no case to make. It's not that anyone, least of all me, is saying, well, the play at the 5 spot has been perfectly adequate this year. None of that is the case. But it's when it becomes a collective obsession of people. And I can, I've talked on the Spartan Mag board about this. The reason that happens is because you've got the guards that you've got. So it's not as if they could say, well, screw it. Hogard has not played well. He ought to sit. They can't do that. So the feeling is, well, that's something you can do. You could play Xavier Booker more. But it's this, I call it the illusion of control. It's this belief that because this is something you can control, that it really matters. At bottom line matters. It may be that you score a few more points, but is it the difference between winning and losing games? No, it's not. It just isn't. And I don't think that's ever been the situation with this team. I've said this a few times. I'm going to say it once more. The reason Michigan State was perceived to be the type of team, or was perceived to be an elite team coming into the season, was because the belief was that it had elite guards. It does not. That has been demonstrated. That is why they are not nearly as good as people thought they would be. And Xavier Booker playing 20 minutes, Xavier Booker playing 30 minutes doesn't change that. It doesn't change it in a fundamental way. It just doesn't. So, the Booker conversation is first of all, it gets really boring from my perspective. It really does. It's dull because it doesn't fundamentally spend that much time talking about something that's actually going to make a fundamental difference in winning and losing. And then we've got something worth all the time. But this stuff, it's, as I've said, it's at the margins. And I think last night it was at the margins. You know, they got the best game arguably of the season out of Xavier Booker. Did they win? Did they win?
No, definitely. Yeah, no.
And why didn't they win? Well, one of the main reasons they didn't win is exactly what I've been talking about. Their guards were not good enough. So, you know, that's where I land on it. I think it's dull. I think that the obsession, it's good to see Booker playing better. That I think is, you know, that's assuming that you keep him. That's a meaningful thing perhaps for next year. You know, that you're getting somebody who's going to have some confidence rolling into next season. And that's something you can work with. And maybe next year he is critical, but he's probably only going to be critical for this team if they find a way to get better guard play. So that means all the new guys that are coming in have to be better than what they're replacing. Now, ask me that question of the likelihood of that happening 5 months ago, and I would have laughed you out of the room. Now, well, the bar isn't as high, so who knows?
I think,
it's not. It's just not. I mean, can Jeremy Fears be a better player in totality than AJ Hoggard has been this year? Hell yeah.
No question. Yeah.
Hell yes. Will he be? I don't know, but can he be? Yeah. If he's healthy, sure.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one thing was, you know, obviously Booker has been not hurt, but the discussion has been aggravated by the fact that he was 5-star coming in, highly rated, and so people were, you know, why we're not seeing this guy, and so I understand some frustration for people that way, but whatever. I think the thing that we always see for these special runs in March for Michigan State is they have a core that's good. And then you see an emergence of like a Draymond Green or something, right? Like this is the time where we had really good guard play, and now you have Xavier Booker starting to emerge like he is. Yep. Now you think, oh, we've got a special player. Maybe Cone Carr starts, but you don't have that, right? And so it's that there's no foundation there, and so you can add like other pieces around the side, but if the foundation is not good, it's not going to work out for you probably.
100%. I said at the outset of the season when it was pretty obvious that Book had not made the kind of strides I'd hoped for over the summer, that the key needed to be Booker and Carr being difference makers by late February.
Right.
That would be that, but that presupposes that you're in a position for them to make a difference. And you're exactly right. It would be a whole other story if we were talking about a team where the guards had played at the level that they needed to. And in fairness, a situation where Michigan State was getting more out of Mackey and Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler as well. You know, that would be the other thing there too. I do think that the frustrating thing about the Booker obsession is that, of course, there are truths here that nobody seriously questions, which is, have they gotten good play out of their fives? No. Those guys have not played as well as you'd hoped. Is that the most important thing, a critical thing for this team? No. It's not.
Right.
It's not what matters most.
And I would also argue that, you know, when Booker is out there playing, it's not like the guards are playing a lot better. Because, you know, that's been one of the, well, you know, if a guy pulls someone out away from the basket, there might have been a play here, there, where there's a slight change. But essentially that's not what AJ's problem with missing layups. I mean, he missed everything in the first half, and that's when Booker played more minutes. So I don't know. I mean,
this is where I land on that stuff. In theory, that sounds cute. In practice, the shots that AJ Hoggard misses are shots that he should hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, look at last night. Were those shots? And I hear that stuff. Well, it makes the job easier for the guards. Yeah, I get the idea in theory that you're stretching the floor. You're not allowing bigs to camp right under the rim. But in practice, AJ Hogard should hit the shots he takes regardless. These are not difficult shots that he's missing. They're just not. So
yeah,
I don't know in practice how much of a difference that's truly making.
Well, one thing that can make a difference in your life is having good gutters, right, Rod? So make sure spring is here, rain's coming soon. I say spring is here at the first week of March. I know I'm cursing myself because it's like 70 degrees outside today as we're talking. And I'm sure a week from now it'll be about 7 degrees or 27 or something like that. It'll be snowing. But for now, we can enjoy the weather. But it also means rain's on the way, and you're going to make sure the water is taken away from your house and not going down the side of your house, pooling around your house. So you need to have good gutters to take care of that. And of course, who do you have to turn to but the brothers that just do gutters? They do the best job. You can get a hold of them here on the west side of the state or on the east side of the state. They can take care of all the problems you have, whether it's just cleaning them out, putting leaf guards on maybe so you don't have to get on the ladder anymore, or they can replace them or repair them. Whatever you need done, they can take care of the job. So check it out at the Final Fours on theschedule.com/support. You can find ways to link to get an estimate from either Kurt or Greg, depending where you are in the state. And so make sure you take care of that stuff that's so important to your house. All right, so the Michigan State player they need to keep in the gutter was Braden Smith. I think we can confidently say they did not keep Braden Smith in the gutter. He was fantastic. He played the whole game, 40 minutes, 8 for 11 from the field, 4 for 4 from 3, 3 or 4 from the line. He had 9 defensive rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, a steal, 23 points. The interesting thing, I think, I saw some stat where he was, over the previous 3 games, he was, I think, 2 for 9 or like maybe 1 for 9 from 3. And this game, he's 4 for 4. He's, perfect. He was fantastic. He was really good. He was the best guard on the floor.
Yep. Yeah. And, there are some guys wearing black and green uniforms that should really be looking at themselves in the mirror today about that fact. But look, I think we said this, that what I think the question that still exists in my mind with Braden Smith was not one that Michigan State was going to ask, which is, how do you respond when you've got consistent ball pressure coming at you for 40 minutes? That's still the open question, because when that's happened this year, I still see shakiness. And I don't know if I believe that he'll ever be a guy that deals with that in a great way. I think sometimes that part of things is sort of baked in. You either are that guy or you aren't. And, Mateen Cleaves was that guy. He could handle someone in his face for 40 minutes. Physically, he could handle it. Mentally, he could handle it. His skill set with his handle could work well in those conditions. But Michigan State was not going to do that. Now, this might be a situation, maybe Tom Izzo would have felt differently, would have approached it differently, if he had Jeremy Fears.
I was wondering that too.
If he had one more body. And I think it's possible. We'll never know. I will say it's not, it's come out in recent weeks that the reason, if you remember the preseason talk about, Michigan State feels they've got the kind of depth that they can apply full court man pressure, a lot more ball pressure. And we saw it in sporadically, we saw it early on, and then it just disappeared. Well, the belief on the coaching staff is that it was having a negative effect on the quality of their half-court defense, that they didn't, when a team handled that pressure and got into half-court sets, that MSU was not playing with the kind of focus they needed to, and so they abandoned it for that reason. Okay, I'm going to take their word for it, certainly. But in this game, I do think And that's another thing too, I guess you could say, to be fair to MSU, is considering that they're completely unable or unwilling to play the style that is best suited to giving you a chance against Purdue. It's impressive they were able to be as competitive as they were. But
Yeah.
But anyway, bringing it back around to Braden Smith, that's what you need to do. If you're really going to have a chance to take that guy off his game, you've got to be able to do that. And in my opinion, at least, that's what gives you a chance, because that's his weakness. If, you know, on the broadcast last night, they emphasized a lot how easy it was for Purdue to get the ball to Zach Edey. And I would say even broader than that, it was easy for them to run their offense. Michigan State did not make it. Now, that doesn't mean that Michigan State played poorly defensively. It's that stylistically, the way they played was going to allow this particular team to do what they wanted to do, because Purdue's capable of doing that against the standard way MSU defends. And that's exactly what we saw. And particularly against Braden Smith, man, if you don't make things hard on him, he can have a night like the one he had where he really took the game over. I mean, I thought he was their best player. I know Edey scored more points, but I think the difference in this particular game, you expect that from Edey against Michigan State because of the way they're going to defend him. That's my point. Braden Smith was the reason I picked him as the guy, is that he was a little more of an unknown in the way that it's not as automatic. You got a chance maybe that he doesn't have that kind of day. Well, that went out the window very early on.
Yeah. They didn't make it They didn't make him uncomfortable.
They didn't make him uncomfortable. And to his credit, he delivered. He hit shots. He hit shots that he hadn't been hitting as consistently recently.
All right. So then we go to the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. No better team to take care of your window cleaning, whether it's your house, your business, maybe a high rise, whatever you need done, whether it's a small job, a big job. They've taken care of our windows. They did fantastic work, meticulous, well priced. 15% off. You mentioned Rebound when you get your estimate. Again, you can find a way to link to that at our contact page support page at thefinalfoursontheschedule.com/support. They sponsor the player that Michigan State has cleans the glass best. And neither of us got at this game, we had a new winner for a player. Was Tyson Walker with 7 rebounds. You had Malik Hall. I had Madi Sissoko. Madi played, I think, 3 seconds in this game. Miraculously, he got 1 rebound in his 6 minutes. Is pretty impressive. So I don't know. I mean, from a rebounding standpoint, though, I guess we'll talk about the keys of the game too. But I thought the one thing I would say about this game that I noticed versus maybe even the Baylor game is Michigan State was doing gang rebounding on the defensive end, which I don't feel like I've seen this year. Like everybody was going for the ball.
I agree.
And it was, even when they've played Illinois and other games, it doesn't seem like it just looked different to me. And maybe I'm just my perception, but it certainly seemed like
I think you're
emphasis.
right. I think you're right. It was that everybody was actively going for loose balls, meaning rebounds that were there to contest it. And so that's what will give you a chance against Purdue. And it did give them a chance, and they hung in there because of it. There were a lot, I would say more than most games we've seen this year. The clean rebounds were hard to come by in this game, and that was in large part because Michigan State competed so well in that area. They were constantly getting hands on rebound opportunities and keeping the ball alive. So that was an area where I thought they did pretty well, and to see Tyson have 7 rebounds, that's an indication of that. They were active. Everybody was involved, all 5 guys. And, if you did that more often, you'd have had a better season in that regard.
Well, and to your point earlier, of the 33 rebounds that Michigan State had, 14 were to the guards. Tyson, Jaden, AJ, and then Trey.
Look, all you got to do for proof of this idea that, you're generally as good a rebounding team as your guards. Look at Purdue. Braden Smith, we talked about, averages almost 6. Well, he averages almost 6 rebounds a game.
Right.
So that performance was it was better than normal, but it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like we're saying, well, Tyson Walker had 7 rebounds and that blows out of the water what he does on a game in, game out basis. It's kind of par for the course for Braden Smith. So is it shocking when you get that kind of production from your point guard that your team is going to sit in a pretty nice position as a rebounding group? No, it's what you'd expect. So it was good. It was a good effort by MSU in that regard.
All right, so we'll get to our 5 keys of the game brought to you by Nudge Printing. If you need Spartan apparel or apparel from other places, other schools in the state of Michigan, even some other random schools around the country, even including Indiana, you can go to nudgeprinting.com. They have a great selection. They have all kinds of vintage stuff that you can get from Michigan State, rough Sparties, those sorts of things. All high quality, super soft, comfortable, wearable. They're washable. They're just great stuff. It's always a favorite of our family. So I'd highly recommend you go check out Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com for all your Spartan gear. You get 20% off if you type in Final Four and the coupon code at checkout. First key of the game, Zach Edey. And I will say, and I'll admit, I have not really watched that much Purdue basketball this year because I don't find them that interesting to watch because they generally pound people.
They're a hard
things
watch.
Like that.
They're a hard watch.
Zach, I've heard you talk about how Edey is not very interesting to watch. And I totally agree. It's just like kind of like a freakish kind of guy who's not like, it's not like a highly skilled. I mean, he's skilled because he's hitting free throws and he's got his things, but he's not like, it's not like watching Trace Jackson Davis where you're watching a great athlete, compete inside. And I mean, it's a totally different sort of post play, I guess you'd say. It's just not, and that aside from all the ridiculous calls and just the fact that he's, hitting people he puts his arms out and they're like at their head level. And so just like clobbering people. It's hard to watch.
Post play can really, it can be a basketball equivalent of ballet or dance, and I'm saying that because it evokes an aesthetic quality that I think that I personally enjoy watching. So you mentioned somebody like Trace Jackson Davis. I had a lot of examples of this. I think Nick Ward had it. Zach Randolph certainly had it. Lots of guys where it's primary. Jackson Kohler, frankly, has it. And finishing isn't there, but in terms of what I'm talking about, footwork, he's got it. Zach Edey does not have that. And he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it because he's 7'5", and he's able to convert. From certain, and I'm not saying that he hasn't worked on his game and hasn't gotten better. Of course he has. He's a much more efficient finisher than he used to be. So that's all true, but it's a hard watch. It's not enjoyable. Bad. And look, if I were a Purdue fan, my response to that would be Al Davis. I don't care. Just win, baby. Yeah. I don't care how it looks. I get that. But for anybody else, it's not fun to watch. And, the kid can't help that. He is who he is, but that doesn't mean I want to watch it. And I think that, the way, look, I can acknowledge that it's difficult to officiate a game with a guy like that. And you've heard this for years about big men. In the NBA for years, people used to talk about how impossible it was to officiate Shaquille O'Neal, because he was just a behemoth, and he did things physically that nobody else could do. And so it made it hard for officials to determine, well, is that really a foul, or is that just an action that's happening because he happens to be so much bigger than everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a difficult, so I acknowledge it's a difficult thing to do, but come on. These guys are getting paid. They are getting paid, so I can have a little bit of sympathy, but not that much. You ought to be able to do a better job. And it's not just last night's game, it's every game.
Yeah.
You know, Zach Edey camps in the lane. We all know it. You could be calling 3 seconds far more frequently. There wasn't a single 3-second call in that game last night. I understand that that's a call that has gone out of vogue in the game, period. But best as I can tell, it's still in the rule book, and it ought to be enforced. And doubly so, it should be a focus when you've got a guy that everybody knows is just hanging out around the rim with his feet in the lane. You know, it's not like it's iffy. It's happening all the time. The stuff
not like
you
can't see
made,
him.
there was a call on Malik Hall trying to defend him in the post last night.
At the end, yeah.
That was
right,
objectively hilarious because the action, the getting tangled up stuff, was all the impetus for it was Zach Edey's movement. It wasn't Malik. But where does the call go? And say, wow, it's impossible. You know, it's just so hard to figure. Not really. No, you can see it on replays, and I understand it's a different thing live, but that's why they're getting paid. That's why those officials are officiating games in the Big Ten. They're supposed to be good. So, I can't believe, knowing what coaches are like in the Big Ten, I have to believe that this is something that coaches other than Matt Painter around the league have spent a lot of time talking about with officials before games, talking about it with the league as a whole, and you don't see it change. And that's unfortunate because the guy's got enough physical advantages as it is. We don't have to give him more.
Yeah. Well, and also I'm thinking there's at least one pretty egregious travel that he had too, where he's just like shuffling moving his feet and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, how can you not see? I just don't understand. He's just so big. Maybe there's so much to look at. Unless you're back far enough, you can't see. Because
maybe. But again, I can't. I have no excuses. None. I don't accept any excuses along those lines. I can understand that it's a difficult task. But you know what? You're supposed to be among the best of the best at this particular job if you're officiating a Big Ten game, and you're getting paid to do it. So do it.
Yeah.
Get the job done. We're talking about A.J. Hoggard not doing his job. Well, why would the officials be any different?
The only other thing I'd add, too, that was interesting is that Zach Edey played 37 minutes. I mean, he played virtually the entire game.
Yep.
And so that is a little bit of a testament to Michigan State and the pressure they put on Purdue. They forced him to have to play that long. Now, he was still able to play that well, and to his credit, he was able to play that well effectively, even at the end of the game. So I can see why he's a National Player of the Year candidate, but again, it's not like aesthetically great.
One thing Purdue has done, which is smart in that regard, is they play him pretty much exclusively in drop coverage. Now, you did see him extend a few possessions when Booker was in the game after Booker hit those 2 threes in quick succession. But by and large, Purdue does not even bother bringing him out on the floor. So in pick and roll coverage, they're not really asking him to move very much, as one example. They generally, because they're such a good rebounding team, and because they shoot well too, it's very difficult to run against them. So Zach Edey is not being put in positions where he has to move as much as you would like if you're coaching the opposing team. Now, that's not always true against a guy like that. A big part of that is because Purdue is a good enough team in totality that they can minimize that stuff.
Right. Right.
But that's one of the main reasons. I mean, he's gotten in better shape and all that. I'm not disputing any of that. But another big part of it is he's not being asked to expend energy the way that you would like to see. And again, this all goes hand in hand with what might produce optimal results against Purdue, or at least give you the best chance, is something that most Big Ten teams won't do, which is apply that ball pressure, try to speed up the game. And one byproduct of that can be you force everybody, including Edey, to have to move a little bit more. But we didn't see that happen. So consequently, he's able to play 37 minutes and to have them, to be able to play at a high level during all of those. He wasn't sucking wind.
Yeah, and I would say, too, I feel like on offense, usually he does not come out and screen a whole lot, and so he's pretty much just hanging out down in the lane.
Yep.
So that's less energy even expended on offense.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
All right, so the second key to the game, turnovers. This is one that Michigan State, as you mentioned before, Michigan State won in the sense that they had 7. Purdue had 9. Michigan State had 12 points off turnovers. Purdue 6. So there's a little advantage there for Michigan State. I think they probably would have hoped to have gotten a little bit more from there, and certainly with fast break points, which is not specifically related to that, but sort of. And that was a 5-3 advantage for Purdue. I mean, it was a really total half court game.
You didn't have many live ball turnovers and chances to get easy points. That's true. Primarily, what I seem to recall talking about here, though, was that I felt like it was critical for Michigan State to have enough scoring opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
More than, they need to get Purdue to really cough it up. Because even though Purdue was kind of mediocre in that area, I didn't think it was likely that Purdue was going to have like 18 turnovers in this game. And they didn't. But Michigan State did the job they needed to do, which is they minimized their own mistakes, which meant they were getting chances to score, which was critical.
Yeah, I feel like even a number of those turnovers that Purdue tried it was restolen. At least that happened at least twice, if not. So they weren't able to really capitalize much. So third key to the game is ball pressure. I mean, I think we can say there probably wasn't really much there. That was your thought. And so,
and I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it, and we didn't see it.
Yeah. So fourth key to the game was the defensive boards, and this is where I thought Michigan State did really well. They held Purdue to a 32% offensive rebounding rate, and I don't feel like the offensive rebounding made a huge difference. It was a little bit of one. Michigan State countered with a 28% average. They actually went with more because they just had more misses. So Purdue had 12 second chance points. Michigan State had 17. So that I think in every extent you'd say is a win for Michigan State, really, for a team that specializes in offensive boards.
Realistically, that was pretty close. I'm not going to say it was the absolute maximum best that Michigan State could have brought to the table in that area, but it was pretty close. It was not a major reason for the outcome either way, and in fact, which we didn't really emphasize, but Michigan State's ability to generate second chances was better than I would have expected coming into the game. So, because that's not an area they've excelled at all, obviously, and yet they were pretty productive against a very good defensive rebounding team. So I think hats off to Michigan State for the job they did on the glass.
And so the fifth and final key to the game was the 3. Michigan State, pretty good. I mean, 9 of 21.
Very good.
43%. I mean, yeah, it's so funny because I'm like, there are a number of times when they had some open ones they missed late, which they needed, and they didn't get them. But anyway, it was, especially they started out real hot in the first half, and then they kind of went cold, and they got behind a little bit, which they came back a little bit with Tyson with that 3 at the buzzer at the second, and then they got that 5-point flurry to come into the halftime. So, I mean, it was good. Obviously, Purdue was better, though, and so that was maybe that you could say is one difference to the game, too.
Yeah, but again, I wasn't talking about the fact that Purdue shot as well as they did was critical. That was the other critical thing. But that was not what I was talking about here. What I was talking about is that it was hard to see a path to Michigan State having a chance to win if they didn't get a lot of production from 3. It just felt like this was a game where that was going to have to be part of the mix. And it was. And they 43%, I'm not ever going to complain about. That was, especially in a road environment, Michigan State shot very well from 3. And the thing was, as opposed to a lot of games this year, if you think about a very frequent occurrence for MSU this season where they'll shoot well from three, but it's largely on the backs of, say, one or two guys.
Yeah.
So you'll have one guy go 5 for 7. And that's got a lot to do with how the team finishes. That was not the case here. I mean, if you look across the board, so you had Tyson was 1 for 2, Jaden 1 for 3, Malik Hall 2 for 3, AJ Hogard 1 for 2, Booker 2 for 5, Holloman 2 for 4. Well, the only guy who had an attempt and didn't hit one was Jackson Kohler. So they really spread the wealth around. That is not something that we've seen typically with this team. So that was a nice feature, that it wasn't just down to one or two guys.
All right, well, I guess we'll leave it there unless you have any final thoughts. I mean, obviously at this point, Michigan State, I think they still have reasonable chance of making the NCAA tournament. Obviously, the margin of error is a lot thinner than it was. Had they won this game, they'd have been in. But, you know.
It's within your control, which at the end of the day is all you can ask for. Michigan State does not have to wait on results from other teams. It's pretty simple. Go do your job. And, you've got a Northwestern team that I'm not sure where all the injuries sit, but they already had one starter out, and they had a couple of other guys leave their game against Iowa. Again, I'm not sure what the status is for those players going forward, but they could come in to that game well below 100%. But, we saw against Ohio State how much that can or may not matter in the end. You still got to go take care of business. That's the position Michigan State's in. They got 2 regular season games left. You win them both, I think there's zero question that they're in the field. You win one, you might want to have a Big Ten tournament win to put the final nail in the coffin, but it's I still think their odds would be pretty good. And if you lose both, you didn't deserve to get in. So, I mean, that's it.
Oh,
so it's all there.
Don't disagree. Yeah, and my family will be heading to Minneapolis for the tournament. Which will be nice because we see some relatives there as well. But we're certainly hoping for more. We'll see how that turns out. And obviously, we got a couple games left. Michigan State still has time to. I mean, we've seen it before where they kind of figure things out. It's kind of harder to envision with this team because it seems like the guards, as senior laden guards, have had plenty of time to figure things out, and they just haven't at this point. But
I don't think it's
matchups and.
I don't think it's about figuring it out, because that's accurate. It would be about, do they hit a hot streak? Yeah,
that's true.
That's really it.
And I would say that the one thing about this team is they have a pretty high ceiling. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, we saw last night, it was pretty good. Obviously could have been a little bit better. But we've seen their floor is it's a wide disparity. They're good and they're bad. And so you can envision them beating just about anybody, but you could also see them losing to just about anybody. And
100%.
And I think you can always say that. You can always say, well, you can beat anybody, you can lose to anybody. But this team truly could lose to anybody and you wouldn't be surprised.
The reason why that applies to this team much more than others is that there was a reason why people thought the guard play was going to be elite. There were valid reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it hasn't manifested that way does not mean that the potential on a given night, or maybe even a few nights, for that to happen is suddenly absent. That's not true. Is AJ Hogard capable of having a night where he's making his layups? Yes, he is. That's what makes it enraging that he doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Again, I would encourage you to continue to support the show by sharing with your friends, leaving 5-star written reviews on your podcast player. I appreciate it. If you want to throw a couple shekels our way, you can head on over to the support page, as well as finding ways to reach out to any of our sponsors of the show, the Nudge Printing, Brothers Gesture Gutters, or the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They're all fantastic businesses we'd love for you to support. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go green.